Welcome today to today's session. I have the pleasure of introducing you to Dennis O'Connell with Taylor Business Group. And Dennis is joining us from Nebraska, right?
You bet. Omaha.
Omaha, that's what I thought. So excellent. And really appreciate you joining us today, Dennis. Dennis is got a topic here that we've done quite a few sessions now over the last number of months, and this is one that is really quite departure, I suppose, from some of the other topics that we've talked about. So I'm excited to learn from Dennis and our own kind of comments and sharing. So CEO's journey from inception to exit. And I'll turn it over to Dennis. He can introduce himself and talk to you a little bit more about Taylor Business Group, and then we'll jump into the session. So thanks, Dennis. Take it away.
Hartland, hey, thanks for the opportunity to do this webinar with you today. I'm Dennis O'Connell with Taylor Business Group. I've been here for just about 4 years now. I've been in the IT business in one form or another since I joined the Air Force and was an applications programmer. And did a stint with the Air Force. Worked for a company called Tandem Computers that got bought by Compaq Computers that got bought by Hewlett Packard. So I've worked with very large companies, and I worked for a very small MSP for a number of years. So, I understand where you all have been, and I've essentially been in the MSP channel for about the last 9 years. So enjoy it. I enjoy working with small business owners. I enjoy hearing your story. It's fun to do that. So this presentation is really a story of the different areas that an MSP owner needs to be, will see as they grow. So, we'll look at it from, inception. You're a one-person company, and now you're going to go all the way and look at these different areas within your business as you grow and mature. So you will change, your personnel will change, your sales will change, your financial maturity will change. The clients that you're looking for will change, and how you grow will change over time. So we'll look at each one of those separately, and it's a lot of fun. Hopefully, as we go along, if you have questions, go ahead and type them into the chat. I think Hartland is going to monitor the chat box, and he'll interrupt me with questions, and we'll go from there. So, let's talk a little bit about the owner. When you started your business, most of the people in IT today started their business because they were working for somebody else and they felt, hey, I can do it better. And so you go off and you start doing it yourself, and you start to grow. And pretty soon you have a business, right? The first thing you got to do is, you're successful and you're going like crazy and you don't have enough time. And then all of a sudden you got to go hire somebody, and now your world changes, right? So how do you learn to hire people? How do you learn to get the right person, understand the process of hiring? So you have to do all that type of work to grow. And, the people that you're hiring, have their own needs, and so you need to learn to do that. As you're hiring people, eventually you're going to get to size where you hire your first manager. And I think the hardest part about hiring managers is to learn how to delegate. You have to, when you delegate, that's something that's from the heart, and from up here is being able to do that, showing them how to do it. And then, they're going to do it differently than you. As long as they get to the end point, that's okay. And sometimes they're going to make mistakes and fail, and that's okay. You can use it as a learning moment. And then, your job then is to coach them along don't hold their hands. Have them always come in and ask you, hey, I need some help. Ask that question of like, well, what do you think the right answer is? And then kind of talk through it from there. As you create a management team, do you hire from outside or do you promote within? That's a hard decision because, a lot of people will take their lead technician and hire them up to be a service manager. And that person's really not good at managing people. He's a great technician. And so, you need to evaluate the people constantly. And then, as you hire and you build up your management team, you need to become a real, I'll call it president, a real CEO, where you now have your management team that's running your business and you've stepped away. If you look at how this goes from a sizing perspective, typically hiring your first manager, you're 6 to 10 employees because you need the service manager. When you start creating your management team, you're in the somewhere between the 10 and 25 employees. And then, you becoming a real president is a little it is later after that. And I think I have that in another slide here. So let's talk about personnel that you have. When you're small, you need technicians who are well-rounded, right? If you have only one or two technicians, you need them to be able to help you, do the BDR type stuff, do security, do RMM, be in the PSA, take calls, all those types of things. So you need somebody who's very well-rounded. And you're going to need, as you grow, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those. At some point in time, you have enough of them and you're managing them. That's, like we talked about, I was hiring your first service manager. And really, that's a key hire. With a good service manager, your employees will be better because the service manager will be able to focus on the services side while you can go over and then start focusing on running the business. As you grow, you will need to start having specialization within your staff. So, when you have 10 techs, you don't need them all to be specialty generalists. You typically have now grown to where maybe you have 1 or 2 people that are focused maybe on just doing projects. You might have somebody who's just focused on keeping your tool set up to date. So, making sure and applying patches to whatever the tool set could be, whether it's Autotask or LineGuard or ID Agent or IT Glue or ConnectWise Manage, whatever it happens to be. You need to have somebody that's focused on that. And what you'll find is that sometimes the folks that you had at the beginning who are generalists don't want to be specialists. And that's where that statement is, maybe the people who got you here are not the people that will get you there means. So you need to constantly evaluate your business and your employees and, is it the right person on the right seat of the bus? And, a gentleman who I respect very much and I worked for a number of years, who owned his own MSP, who grew it from, he was employee number 5. And, they were up to 15 million when he left as their president. Used to say that every 18 to 24 months, he needed to re-envision and reimagine his business. So he needed to take a look at all his people. He needed to take a look at, were they the right people? Did the roles change? Those types of things. And so it was important for him that he had in his mindset that he had to do that regularly. And as you grow and as you run your business, you probably need to do the same thing. Um, and even in today's world, even if you're not growing, you need to reimagine your people because 2, 3 years ago, security was a small piece of your business, and now security is becoming more and more important. And so, do you have the right people on your staff to be able to handle today's challenges?
Dennis,
Dennis,
Yeah.
comment or a question here
Yeah.
that I was just thinking about. Recently we have an MSP client, and he's very, very profitable, and yet he is basically frankly sort of running around with his head cut off, wearing a lot of hats, and very much involved in the business. And so I just wondered, and maybe you're going to get there, and if you are, I'll let you keep going. But I guess my question is that, to the extent that some of these this delegation process happens, and the owner is time is freed up, and you talked about not working in the last slide was the day-to-day operation. So what might a CEO be choosing to work on then, or what should they be working on that's more sort of the on your business versus in the business? And as I say, maybe you'll get there.
I'll get there, but I'll answer your question now. As you grow, the owner really needs to be the catalyst for growth. So that means that they need to be the catalyst for sales. And how do you create a sales engine? And that's really the next slide here. They will spend more time driving growth, driving efficiencies, holding their employees accountable, working on and creating the strategy, the vision to move forward, where they want to go, evaluating the landscape. So, as a business owner, you especially in the IT, even if you had your head in the sand, you would know that security has become important, right? So you need to go back and say, okay, now what does that mean to my business? What does it mean to my clients? What does that mean to the agreements that I have in place? What does it mean to what's on my website, right? So much I've read where there was a a ransomware attack, and one of the people sued him because on his website we have your security needs covered, right? And he didn't have his security needs covered, and he wanted to go back to his agreement, and the agreement said, in so many words, we have your security needs covered. And so you need to start being very specific. I mean, it's just something very minor, Hartland, having that on your website. Well, people believe it, right? But then you go, well, in today's world, you should have had, A, B, and C from. I should have sold you ABC. Well, you didn't tell me that, or you have it. I just assume because I see that. So I don't know what your thoughts are there. Hartland.
Yeah, well, look, that's a really interesting point, and I think that's something that we need to be mindful of as well, of course, in terms of writing content for a lot of the client projects that we work on. But there's this discussion that I've had many times where, at least as it pertains to security, and frankly, I suppose other things like backup as well, where there's a discussion of hey, the MSP has the capability of providing those services. that doesn't necessarily mean that the customer has taken advantage of those services, or taken advantage of those services to the extent that they need to be sort of fully protected, if you like, whether it be, as I say, backup or security or other instances. So that's an interesting point. And of course, then it becomes incumbent upon the MSP to demonstrate that, no, we actually brought this up to you, and we had a discussion, and you declined that level of service or those recommendations. So that's a very interesting point.
Yeah. So those are the types of things that as you start working on your business versus in your business, you need to think about. And again, that was just one example. There are many more. So hopefully that answered your question. And yeah, I'll probably touch on it in another place as we move along. You know, so flipping back to the presentation, we're talking about sales. As what changes as you move along in sales, right? Most owners don't realize that they are the salesperson for the company. They get to $1.5 million, $2 million, and they've just done it naturally, right? It's people get referred to them. They have an air and a presence about themselves that when they go in, they talk to a client, the client goes, I believe you. I mean, and they're selling naturally. But at some point in time, there's not enough time for the owner to be in the business and selling, right? As you probably know, Hartland, as you've grown your business, when it's just you, there's lots of time to sell. And then, you're fixing things. At some point in time, you've grown big enough that there's enough fixing things to keep you busy all the time. So the sales stagnate. And so that's when we talk about creating a sales engine. You have to figure out how to keep the back engine going and the answering the questions and the automation, all that, while you continue to grow. And if you're over on this side of the business, you can't be over on this side of the business because there's only so much time. So that's when we talk about hiring sales help, right? Getting somebody to help with the marketing, right? I am and have been doing sales for over 20 years, but I'm not a marketing person, right? I know when I see good marketing, and I can have a conversation with you, Heartland, and talk about what I like and what I think I want, but still it takes somebody with that mentality to help. I've done cold calling. I don't like it, but I do it, right? and if you ask most owners, they would they would highlight that as in red, like I don't want that. But the other way to help with sales and is through client account managers, or other people use other names. I've heard them be called VCIOs, technical account managers. But whatever you call it, this is the person who manages your existing clients and allows you, who know how to sell, to move forward and continue to sell and bring in new clients. They're the people who do your QBRs. They're the people who you put a quota on to sell additional projects to maybe they're just doing your basic plan for IT support. Well, if you guys, if your company also sells a voice over IP solution, you want to try to introduce them to that. And so how do you grow, the objective of the client account manager is to take an existing client and increase their revenue to you. So they're often helping to grow your base while you're over here being able to grow and add clients. And as you do that, and as you bring in other people to help with, you have to take and create processes, and we as owners in the IT space have created processes on the service side. When we install a server, we do it the same way, whether it's a physical server or it's in the cloud. When we do a desktop, we have a standard image we put on it. In the sales world, most owners do it intrinsically, right? They go out, they sell, and there's no real process to it. So when they go hire somebody, and they say go sell, these people don't have the checklist to follow. So they need to work through that. You also need to, you need to learn to be a sales manager. So how do you manage these people? They think differently than engineers, right? So you need to think and understand and go that way. And you need to invest your time in there. And all this process will create that sales engine.
And I think, Dennis, I mean, this is a good point. I've heard time and time again about groups that have hired salespeople and are frustrated because 6 months later, there's nothing to be really shown for the efforts and the salary that they've paid, to that point, and so they end up terminating a relationship. And that's a common structure. And the question, of course, is, well, and it's not my job to get into it, but I certainly wonder. What support that person was given. So is there a process around their sales efforts, right? Because certainly if you're having success, and if you've had success as an owner, to try to replicate that and put a process around it so that you can share that with whoever you hire. But obviously there's groups like yourself and general outside of MSP space groups that are provide sales training and whatnot. But to have a process around that, I think is key to have them win, right?
Yep, very much so. And a lot of people, when they hire, whether it's an inside salesperson that's doing the calling, or a client account manager, or somebody who's going to go out and look for new clients, they'll hire them and say go sell, right? And in reality, you as the owner need to invest up to 50% of your time in working with them to teach them your way. And lots of times need to provide the pipeline, right? And the pipeline then brings back into the marketing piece of, I'm hiring a salesperson and say go sell. Well, who do you want me to sell to, right?
Yeah, I was just going to say, there's a very much of a difference between the internal inside sales kind of mindset and the hustler that's generating leads. So absolutely, I think critical piece, and we're on the other side of the fence here, providing leads, but not deciding who gets those leads and how they're divvied up and how many, and is it keeping the sales team busy and whatnot. But I mean, these are important drivers, because I think it's a huge expectation mismatch there is often the case, where the understanding that the salesperson is going to be handed leads by the house, and yet the house is really not doing a whole lot to help the salesperson succeed, and they're kind of left to cold call and fend for themselves, and with that in conjunction with a lack of process, and they fail.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing that I've worked with a couple larger MSPs, and I'll say, they've got 2 or 3 outside salespeople. So, they're up in the 40, 50 employee size. And their experience has been, when they hire a salesperson, that it takes them 12 to 18 months to be fully engaged in really covering and meeting the objectives that that the company wants. So, they'll keep them on a, it's like the first 3 months, you don't expect anything, right? Because they're understanding who you are. They're lots of times you're not hiring somebody who's in the IT space, so it takes a time to ramp up. Um, you as an owner can realize fairly quickly whether that salesperson is going to be successful, if he has the right mentality. But lots of times it takes longer for them than the owner believes. It's not like a technician who you bring in and you expect them to be functional in 30 days, 2 weeks, something like that.
Yeah, and we see this, similarly from a marketing perspective. We see this on the other side where there's a campaign of one sort. I mean, SEO is probably the easiest and most common example where someone wants to invest in their organic search and then has unrealistic expectations in terms of what's involved, and then sort of aborts the process maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months down the road, and really it probably didn't make sense to start in the first place. So, similarly, why are you going to go through the process of hiring someone, training them, and then sort of letting them go before you can actually reap the benefits or the fruits of
Right.
those efforts?
Yeah. Yeah. I work for for an MSP, and one of the first things, after I was hired, the owner come up and goes, "Hey, glad to have you on board. Just to let you know, I hate salespeople. Go be successful." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So, and as I was there longer, I said, "So why do you hate salespeople?" He goes, you know, "You're like, I don't know, 20, 30, and they come, they go, and because I like you, but in general, I hate salespeople."
Well, I mean, this speaks to a bigger issue, right? Of support from above, and chances are that, and we see it whether it's marketing, frankly, or sales, that it's kind of a little bit oil and water with a lot of MSP owners who oftentimes are more sort of technical and may not like being sort of quote unquote sold to, but at the same time, this is going to be crucial for the success of their business. And
Yeah.
whether they like salespeople or not, it's going to be critical, and they need to wrap their head around that and support these people. Otherwise, it's in their own vested interest.
Yep. And that's where the owner needs to learn to be a sales manager. He needs to at least think like them and be able to manage them.
Or hire somebody. I mean, if you can get to that point, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So making the next step, talking about financial evolution of a business as it grows. Most business owners start from a financial perspective of just cash. They may or may not have a chart of accounts that makes sense. And at the end of every month, they know they're doing well when they still have money in the checking account, right? And eventually that is the maturity, is that you move to a standardized chart of accounts within that has an MSP focus. And we have one, and we're willing to share it with anybody at no cost. And you're welcome to reach out to me and I'll share it with you. But go ahead.
No, that'd be great, Dennis. We can accompany the presentation deck with that potentially, if that works.
Okay. Yeah, I'll send it over to you. And as part of the standardized chart of accounts, we also have a column that next to a particular line item that says this is what goes here. So sometimes you read the title and you say, what does this mean? Right? You can go over, and we have a half a dozen examples of these types of things go here. So you can start to look at your numbers and get a feel for them. And then that's getting to know what good looks like. And so you need to understand what good benchmarks are, right? So for example, and we have a whole nother presentation on benchmarks, but an example of one is that service salaries should be 33% of your services revenue for you to be able to drive the profitability that we think you should have, which is about 11%. So, as you mature, you start to realize, okay, how am I doing against the community? And, am I putting money in the bank? Am I being able to be profitable at the end of it? So, that talks about how profitability changes as you grow. So, your highest profitability is when you are 10 employees and lower, right? Because you have no management overhead. As you start adding management, your profitability will go down because that manager is typically not fully leveraged. So, for example, I have 5 techs and I hire a service manager. That service manager can really manage 10 techs. So until you get to 10 techs, he's not fully leveraged, right? His salary is across 5 people where it could be across 10 people. So your profitability is not as much. And as you continue to add layers of management, an administrator, a bookkeeper, a sales manager, as you add those types of resources, your profitability will go down. And from our perspective, we typically will see almost like you'll be going along and then you'll do a U and you'll come down, you'll come back up, and then you'll keep on going. And once you get to 25, 30 employees, your profitability will go back up again because all of your management overhead is fully leveraged against the resources they are managing. So, through time, don't be surprised as you add people and as you start adding managers, your profitability goes down. So that's why you need to be looking at, when it's just you with no management, you should be doing 20, 25% profitability, because when you start to add that overhead, you're going to go down to the, 10, 11%, and then you'll come back up again. And then the final point around financial evolution is, and I'll talk about it a little bit in the M&A side, is that we will all exit our business, Hartland. I'm not going to live to be 1,025, right? I can promise you that. At some point in time, we will all exit. Some of us on our own terms, others on God's terms, right? So you should start to run your business as if you're going to sell it tomorrow. And I tell people that, and they go, I want to keep it for 25 years. And I go, that's great, right? Run it like you're going to sell it tomorrow, even though you're going to run it for 25 years, because you never know. Somebody might come along and make you an offer you can't refuse. And if your books are clean and your accounting practices are good, you're going to get top dollar.
Well, and Dennis, I would say, and I completely agree with all these points. I would also say that running your businesses, if you're going to sell tomorrow, creates a mindset, and it's a mindset to kind of clean house, clean operations, question everything, and then as you said, certainly it always gives you the option, but I think it allows you to run a cleaner business, and expenses that you may be paying, subscription fees and whatnot, that you're not really fully utilizing and you don't need. So there's kind of a cost savings to be realized there. So I think it's a worthwhile process to go through, regardless, for a variety of reasons.
Yeah. And one of the things that you mentioned there is, every MSP should pick a date, January 1st, June 22nd, and that date every year should be on their calendar, and it should be to review all subscriptions, right? And just everything I'm paying on a monthly basis that I just pay automatically, go back and look at every one of those and say, am I still using it, and do I need it? And you'd be surprised that you can save thousands of dollars a month by doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So yeah, great point. Um, so then, we'll talk a little bit about process maturity. And I touched on this earlier. This is, when it's just you, you're kind of doing it ad hoc, and you get a couple other people and you're doing it ad hoc. But once you start to get, two, three technicians, you need to make sure that you're doing everything consistent, that you start having repeatable processes, um, that there should be documentation, whether you're using line guard or IT glue or whatever process you're using to do your documentation. Whenever something comes along and you go to the playbook and it's not there, you should create the playbook for that, right? So you don't have to build, you don't have to sit down and write the playbook in 60 days. You write a piece of the playbook every day, and eventually your playbook goes from here to here as you grow. Um, this will reduce maintenance. That way, if I go install something and Heartland, you come along and have to fix it, you know that it's done the same way that you would have done it. So you know where to look and do that kind of stuff. So it saves time, and ultimately will make you more profitable. You need to invest in tools, but not all tools, right? A lot of the members have shiny tool syndrome, right? And so everything that comes along, I'll take one of those, I'll take two of those, right? And so you need to make sure that you only get the tools that help you be profitable. I see. Thoughts on that, Hartland?
Well, the one that comes to mind is duplication, right? Where you've got two tools that are seemingly doing the same thing, and of course this happens in an acquisition scenario where there may need to be some consolidation. But in terms of supporting, and it's not just tools, it's also the tech stack too, right? Whether it's a disaster recovery backup solution that you're supporting, or other third-party tools where your team now has to be um, um, skilled and staying on top of multiple tools. This is a real drag on their time and efficiency.
Yep. Yeah, agree 100% there. And then, the final point here is, escalations. You need to have, you typically have level 1, level 2, level 3, and you can't let issues sit at a level 1 for 2 hours that should have been escalated at 15 minutes and could have been solved in 15 minutes by a level 2 or level 3 tech. So, you need to have clear escalation paths so that you can get to closure faster, right? And ultimately that allows and makes happier clients. So, then, as we're talking about clients, your client mix will change over time, right? So, anything for about when you get started, you know, all revenue is good revenue when you get started.
I like that acronym. I haven't seen that before. Maybe I been hiding in a cave, but it makes sense.
Yeah. You're allowed to steal it if you want to. I didn't make it up. Yeah, and what you were just talking about is, when you get started and I'm willing to take on this dental company and this manufacturing company, I might end up with 4 or 5 or 6 backup solutions because it's revenue, right? But over time, you need to shed those 4 or 5 backup solutions, and you need to get down to 1, maybe 2, because it provides efficiency, right? There's less time solving a problem because people know that solution in detail, right? You don't have to, if I need to have 2 people trained on Datto and 2 people trained on um, another solution and a third solution, well, pretty soon I have all these people trained on it, and I'm spending a lot of time and energy and money in training them so that I can support them. So, you will start to wean your clients down to particular solutions, and so you are becoming more mature. Um, and then, finally, you will get to a position where you have a standardized solution, and you will go out to market, and you will say, and you'll be talking to a manufacturing company, and you do a lot of manufacturing, and I support these types of things. And he goes, well, I'll only go with you if I can have uh, HP laptops. And you go, well, no, we do Dell, and we only do Dell. And he goes, well, if it's not HP laptops, then the deal's off. And you go, okay, deal's off. And you walk away because Dell, right? Or Lenovo, or wherever it is, doesn't make any difference, right? You know them, and that's who your people are. And so you will be able to command a higher price because you are much more efficient. You will be much more profitable that way also. And through time, you will also learn and refine who your ideal client is. We call it the tailored client profile. So, when I talk to a lot of MSPs, they will say, yeah, I want anybody with 10 to 100 seats, right? Over time, you'll find that you really want people with 30 to 50 seats.
Yeah.
Right. That, that say, that your client, the SMB, says, I value IT and I have a budget line item for it, right? I want to grow. In other words, so I'm going to get somebody that's got 30 seats that maybe in 5 years has 100 seats, right? So your ideal client will become much more strategic.
What is your position on industry, Dennis, in terms of focusing on industry, like generalist focused on industry? How many industries? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. We work with MSPs across the United States and Canada, and we have members in New York City, and people who are in New York City can be very focused. Just if they're not in the financial services, they're not in the financial services business, we're not interested in, right? You get to somebody who is in Omaha, which is typically considered a tertiary city, right? You can't focus just on financial services people because there might only be 4 companies.
Yeah.
So the answer is it depends, right? It depends on where you are and what you want to do. I'll give you an example. We had a client in Florida who specialized in a specific type of medical practice, and he had gotten to the point where his part of Florida, he had
tapped it out.
Yeah, he was out of capacity, so he had 2 choices, and he went through a process, like a SWOT and whatever, and his choices were, I can move to a different vertical, I can go higher, I can go buy a competitor in another city that in my city or another city that allows me to provide diversity, or I can change my market. Instead of just being in part of Florida, I can go and chase this very specific vertical across the state of Florida.
Right.
Right. And so it kind of depends on where you want to go and where your expertise is. So to answer your question, Hartland, each company is different in answering that question based on the skill set of their people and their geographic location and what's available to them.
And I think the other interesting thing that that we've seen certainly with COVID is groups that for instance, like I remember speaking with an MSP at one point that was focused on the um, like the gaming space, right? And casinos in particular. And so, with COVID, that's obviously not been the most ideal target group. And similarly, groups that are focused on hospitality. We've also seen it with energy, right? Texas, oil and gas, and Canada, province of Alberta with oil and gas, but then, you want to ride that up and down and up and down. So there's that sort of the implications there as well, with to some degree sort of the all your eggs in one basket discussion.
Yeah. And we have a couple of members who focus strictly on dental, right? 80% of their practice was dental. Well, they had 3 miserable months. But you know what? Those, as soon as they were allowed to open them back up, the demand went, off the charts. And so they are back to where they are now, and actually ahead, because all that pent up demand hit.
Yeah.
Right. A lot like we're seeing with, houses now. The price of wood, kind of, this is a tangent, but the price of wood used to be in a house used to be $10,000. The price of wood in a house is about $40,000 now.
Yeah.
So it will come back if you're focusing. So the next area to look at is, how do you grow? There's different ways to grow. Mergers and acquisitions. We hear a lot about mergers and acquisitions. This is a 249th M&A for 2021. In 2020, we had X number of M&As. You see the big ones. The PE companies want to come in. They want to buy people up. Well, the PE companies and the big companies want to buy people who are putting 20 points to the bottom line and are bigger than 7 to 10 million. Right. So until you get there, you're not going to get bought by a PE company. But there's an opportunity for growth. As if you go to any conference, Hartland, you will see that there's a lot of people who have the same haircut as I do, or they have gray hair. And a lot of these people are starting to age out, and they're looking to figure out, how do I sell my business? And they might be 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 employees, right? So you can grow through M&A by buying small businesses. And you start small, you get used to it. I have one of our members that he has bought 3 small companies. 2 of them went awesome, and 1 of them was the worst he's ever done. Right. So each one has its own unique benefits to it. But growth, if you're going to drive growth, should you do it through M&A or organically?
Well, and Dennis, I mean, as you well know, we're involved in both of these areas, and so this is close to my discussion is close to my heart as to the implications for both. And we've done a lot of sessions in the past and written content on this topic, so I won't take a tangent and go into that here too much. But one of the things that I think will be interesting, you talk about your haircut at conferences, but I also am interested to see whether COVID is fast tracking some groups' plans for whether it be retirement or perhaps just doing something different, and then also the implications of security and the risk. I know I've talked to some MSPs who are I guess a little bit concerned, I suppose, about the responsibilities that they kind of hold in that regard, and the ability to sleep at night, and the risk that brings. And we talked earlier in this session about a group suing an MSP over a ransomware attack. So I guess I just sort of I'm curious to see how this plays out. I felt that COVID would be a bit of a catalyst for groups to potentially sell, but I don't have any data points on that, and I was expecting that that would sort of play out in 2021.
Yeah, we haven't Within our membership, and we always have one or two members buying and selling. We didn't see any difference um, in we have seen that our members have grown because they're taking it away from those who perform poorly in in
Right.
2020.
Right.
Right. So what happened was 2020 put a spotlight. You could be an okay MSP, but when work from home happened and stuff hit the fan and you had 2 months, if you weren't good, it was very obvious you weren't good. And so that put a lot of stress on those type of people. And it has been easier for our members to displace those types of MSPs.
Right.
So it will put pressure on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, we also see a lot. We've seen a few more instances of owners, not part of our membership, who are saying, "I'm just tired of running the business. I just want a job for a while. I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years. Can I sell it, get some money, and then I just want to keep working? So will you buy my clients and hire me as an employee?" And sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't, because when they stop being the owner and become an employee, they still think they're the owner, right? So
Yeah.
can again, that's a case by case scenario, and I'm probably sure you see that on your side when you're doing M&As.
Absolutely, it's a consideration. Is can that person make that transition? And then many times they feel they can. Whether they can or can't is remains to be seen. So I think it's important. That's a whole other road. Again, another session, another day. But
Yeah,
how to sort
yeah,
of mitigate those types of issues.
yeah. But we're just trying to touch base and provide the different things that happens over time within the business. And then the last one is really around exiting the business. A lot of people will say, "Okay, I want to sell. What does that mean?" Um, and this too, Heartland. It can take. If I said today I want to sell, and I haven't been running my business as if I'm going to sell it tomorrow, it might take me 3 years to get my business ready to sell.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then after I contact somebody to say I want to sell, it may be another 6 to 12 months to close the deal. So if I don't run my business as if I'm going to sell it tomorrow, and then I choose to sell, I may be 3 to 5 years before I can get top dollar. Right. I can always sell it at some price, but if I want to maximize my return, then I have things I need to do to get it going.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, there's the whole find a buyer, due diligence. And, one thing you got to remember, the value of your business is based on one thing, and that is what the buyer is willing to pay, right? You may think it's worth $1 million or 2 million or 5 million, whatever, but the buyer is only willing to pay 2.5 million. It's worth 2.5 million to him. There might be another buyer who's willing to pay more, but
I was just going to say, I think the interesting thing is, there's this question about doing a valuation, having a third party group do a valuation, and what does that mean? And my view is that it's certainly a good data point to have. It's maybe a benchmark to compare against. But the reality is that it's only worth what the market's willing to pay for it, and that there is considerable variation, in my experience, between what one buyer will pay and another will pay, simply because of what's important to one group versus another. And there may be some synergies or whatnot as a strategic buyer that makes sense and can justify a higher price. So
yeah.
It's a very interesting kind of process, and to have these discussions and see what's important to different groups.
Yeah. So this is the end of the presentation. I just have a couple of slides on Taylor Business Group. Are there any questions out there first, Hartland?
I'm not seeing any right now. So I know that you and I've had my own questions and had a bit of a dialogue here. So I think this is a really good overview of the process, and probably one that a lot of groups haven't had an opportunity to take a back, to take a step back, I guess, and look at their business and look at it through this sort of a lens of start to finish, and then do a bit of a drill down on each one of these. So, even for those who say, well, I've looked at these types of discussions before, but to take another kind of deep dive on it and see what improvements that you can make, and sort of where you're at in the process, and understand what your options are.
Yeah.
Dennis, I did have one question for you, if you don't mind, and it's going back to a little bit earlier in the presentation when you were talking about some of the challenges in regards to hiring various job titles, whether it's dispatcher, service manager, or salespeople, etc. I was curious, for those different types of job titles, is there any that are particularly challenging for MSP owners? Like, I'm wondering, for instance, if it's easier for them to make technical hires than it is the other varieties.
Right now, all hires are hard. A lot of our members have moved to a position where they're constantly hiring. Right? They'll put multiple job descriptions out there. So they'll be looking to hire level 1, level 2, and level 3. And when somebody comes in to interview, thinking and applying for level 2, they'll talk to them and they'll go, really, you fit more of our level 1 or our level 3. And so they'll maybe move them around. But I would say that there's two things that our members, you would ask them, what are the two hardest things that they would like to have solved? One is, I want more clients. I want more, prospects that I can go have a good conversation to. I want sales. And the other one is talent, right?
Dennis, I mean, just piggybacking on Devin's question, because I think that question can be addressed from a few different perspectives. I mean, one is the market, right? The hiring market, and of course that's going to vary from geography to geography in terms of how difficult that is. But in the competition, I guess the other aspect is the owners' preferences around what their competencies are. So if I'm particularly technical, I might have no issue with wanting to hire and hiring good technical people. But because I'm not good at sales, or I'm not good at marketing, hiring salespeople might not be something I'm overly comfortable with. I just wonder, do you get involved in helping your clients to make sales, to do a vetting process, be part of the interviewing and screening process to identify what characteristics, what skill sets, etc., the candidates should bring? That whole piece of the puzzle, I suppose.
We do in a couple of very narrow areas. So we, you may know what DISC is.
Yeah.
It changed its, now it's called Selling for Success. But we have a DISC profile for service managers, and we have a DISC profile for salespeople. So, if somebody is looking for a service manager, they can reach out to us. We'll, it's a standard DISC, do an hour's worth of coaching with them, walk through our, what we think, whether they're, high I, high C, high, remember they should be a DC or whatever it should be. And we'll walk through that process with them. And, so when the candidates come in, they get down to 1 or 2, we can do that with them.
Right.
I'm more than welcome to do that. Do we actually, we'll do recruiting for service managers. We'll run through the whole process of job description, putting it out on the boards, taking the resumes as they come in, saying, hey, we think these are your top 3 guys. We'll sit in on the interviews with them and then go through the process of bringing them in. So we'll do that for service managers. We can do that for salespeople too.
Interesting. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I imagine that a lot of groups would benefit from that type of support.
Yeah.
Dennis, I've just noticed we're at the kind of the end of our hour here. Do you want to talk just briefly about Taylor Business Group a bit, and then we should probably wrap up?
Yep. So, just real quick about us, our, what we try to do is help MSPs grow and be profitable and create value. We have members that range in size from about 400K to over 25 million. So it's a very broad breadth of revenue. And we run business improvement groups for owners, sales, COOs, service managers, and project managers. And we always say, so what's the proof in the pudding? And people can say, hey, we're going to help you grow and we're going to make you more profitable. So what we did was we looked at 32 companies that started December 1st of 2019 through September. And this is what their total revenue looked like. And you're going, Dennis, so this looks crappy. Revenue's going, they've been with you for 18, 19 months and revenue's going down. You go, yeah, okay. But, what's interesting is, it's like the old drive, golf axiom, you drive for show and you putt for dough, right? So if you look at that, their revenues went down, but, in over here in 2019, they never got above 350,000 combined in total net operating income. Go over to 2020, and this is COVID, right? March, April, May, June. This is all COVID. Their profitability is up above 400,000. 5 out of 6 months.
And presumably there's some maybe customer cleanup in there as well, right? To get rid of some of the revenue, but actually it aids in profitability.
Yeah, and really the big change is really around here. These guys, services revenue is what's profitable, right? And so they started off not below 50% in services revenue. They're ending up at close to 80% in services revenue. Services revenue is what's profitable. Yeah. So they were focusing on the right part of their business, and this goes back to that whole adage of it's the whole adage of doing and understanding what good looks like and where you want to go. Good financials, good benchmarks.
Yeah.
And then, to kind of wrap it up here, if you want to reach out to me, here's my contact information. When you do reach out, we'll waive the $950 onboarding fee. And just love to have you part of Taylor Business Group.
Excellent. Well, look, and I also can speak from experience that Dennis publishes a regular set of webinars in his communication as well. So lots of great topics. So encourage you, if you have any questions and looking for some support in ways that we can't. Dennis's group does everything that we don't do. So I think it's a great compliment, and that's why we wanted to have Dennis on in our session today. So Dennis, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. We worked together in the past, and thank you for your time. Thank you for your knowledge, and we very much appreciate it.
Well, I'm honored to be here, and thank you very much.